Abstraction. Abstraction is the process of making something that is really complex and zooming in to make it more understandable and looking at the small details. You can then zoom out until all the details come together and you can see the full picture. For example, colors in computers are made up of different amounts of red, green, and blue. For example, purple is 255 red, 0 green, and 255 blue. This represents the maximum amount of red, no green, and the maximum amount of blue. Red plus blue equals purple, so when you put the numbers together, we get purple. We don't want to have to think about these colors each time we use them, so we'll often save the colors ahead of time so that we can access them by name. At the start of the program, we define the colors that we want to use, and then throughout the program, we'll reference them by name. Following the idea of zooming in, we have to be very specific about the code we write. An example of this attention to detail is that computers use nothing but ones and zeros, and yet we can interact with them using words. Programming at this lowest level has made apps for us to use so that we can ignore the numbers and use words, in the form of programming languages, to give instructions to the computer. Now we can use programming languages like Scratch, C++, or Python to write programs instead of manually giving the computer individual instructions using numbers. Being organized can help with the overall process of coding. It allows us to know what code is where. This is especially useful if you have an error with a part of a project and need to know what went wrong. Being organized also helps to break down the total amount of work you need to do because you can know exactly what you need to do and not get sidetracked by other tasks. When I look at a chair, I don't think of it as 4 legs, a seat, and a back with some screws holding it together. I just think of it as a single object. That's a chair. This is an abstraction because we're ignoring all the smaller details to make it easier to think about. Another example of abstraction is a book. When you look at a book, it's made up of one book with pages between each cover. Between the pages, you have chapters, and in the chapters, you have paragraphs. In the paragraphs, you have sentences. Each sentence is made of words. The words are made of letters, and the letters are made of lines and curves. You don't have to think about each line or curve or each letter because you look at each word. And when you think about the book after you've read it, you think of the ideas that came from the chapter, not the individual words. Abstraction allows us to break down a problem and address small individual parts one at a time. When we're programming, we have to be very specific. Abstraction allows us to be specific one time and not have to worry about those little details ever again. And finally, abstraction helps us stay organized. It's easier to look at the general process of a program rather than having to navigate every little detail